Welcome to the Love and Sex Today show with Dr. Doug Weiss. Doug has been healing hearts and relationships for decades. He's helped thousands of people release the shame and the guilt, restoring hope, helping people get free from addictions to enjoy a better sex and love life. Here he is, your host, Dr. Doug Weiss.
Welcome to Love and Sex Today. I am Dr. Doug Weiss, and this is going to be our fourth conversation. And today's topic is going to be really, really helpful. You know, today's topic is going to be one of those where it could actually change your sex life. It could change your sex life forever. I'm very excited about this topic. This topic is having a sexual voice. I've been counseling men and women for, almost 30 years. And we talk about sex every single week. Every single week. What a job, right? But what I found out is that so many people who are married or in long-term committed relationships do not actually talk about sex, and therefore neither one feels heard. Neither one feels understood. And it starts with having a voice. Now, I want you to go to loveandsextoday.com, subscribe there, and write a review on iTunes. This is very important. One of you will be selected who write a review for a private conversation with myself, and we'll go into any topic you want to and hopefully help accelerate some area of your life. Also, there's a free chapter on the webpage. Go there to loveandsextoday.com and get that for yourself. Now, this topic is burning for me because even this week, I have had couples who flew in from all over the country, sometimes all over the world, and they open up about their sex life. They open about their frustrations and how she doesn't feel understood, or she feels, this behavior is kind of questionable as far as acceptable to her or not. And he feels misunderstood about his desire to have sex or desire to be creative. Now, sometimes, they have to kind of learn each other's sex language, and that's another conversation we will have down the road. The book, The 5 Sex Languages, is a great book for understanding how each other's wired for sex. But sometimes this conversation about sexuality is often one that is not spoken. We don't talk about it. We feel frustrated. Our sexual needs feel unmet, unheard, unwanted, rejected, are actually sometimes shamed, named, and accused in some weird way because our sexualities are different. But what makes this even odder when you're sitting in a counseling session is that couples have never talked about it. They kind of just mumble around it or fumble around it or grumble around it, but they never really straight up just say, hey, this is what's going on with me. So today I want to talk about having your sexual voice. Now, to have a sexual voice, just like a voice in other areas of your relationship. So let's talk about that. In finances, are you heard? Do you feel like your opinion matters? Do you feel like your intuition matters? And are you part of that conversation? In parenting, are you heard? Do you have your parenting voice? Okay. Do you have your voice as it relates to, the environment that you both live in? How you decorate it? What gets done? Who does what around the house? Do you have a voice in the way that chores are being managed? Or does one person just bully the other person or passive aggressively just not follow through or do things? And the tensions grow in any area of your relationship where one of you either doesn't have a voice, doesn't choose to have a voice, or if one of you refuses to hear the voice of the other. Hearing each other's voice is like hearing the heart of the other person. This is not an area of right or wrong. This is not an area of I need to fight about it and win. I need to be in control of you. It's not an area where you want to make it like you need to be like me for us to work. If we're both like me, then we'll work just fine. That's not marriage. That's not relationship. That's some kind of odd thing where you want to believe that the world should conform to your personality. Well, I guarantee you, as a psychologist, I can guarantee you did not marry your personality. And for very good reasons. The balancing of personalities really makes a better combination. It makes both of you better. I've seen that hundreds and hundreds of times where the two people that are married, they're perfect for each other. They balance each other in several areas out in life. I know Lisa is my perfect soulmate. She balances me in her wisdom. She balances me in her temperament. She balances me financially and in parenting. And I balance her too. That's what makes our marriage fun. And we actually love each other. We really do respect the differences, but we hear each other. Lisa has a voice sexually, spiritually, emotionally, and I've encouraged her to have that voice. And I have a voice. I feel very understood and loved by my wife. And even when we disagree, we hear each other. And sometimes that's the beginning of the conversation. We just hear each other, we disagree, we think through it, we come back, we hear each other again, and we tend to move towards a solution that neither one of us would have found without the other person walking with us down the road. Well, this is no truer than the area of sexuality. So if you have your voice, the characteristics of having your voice is you can talk about sex. Now, that may sound strange, and that pause might have been awkward, but there are lots of couples where one of you or both of you either don't talk about sex or don't believe you can talk about sex or believe that talking about sex is always dirty, wrong, and bad, so don't do it with the one you love. Now, I know that sounds crazy, but that's the way some people actually think. So, if you have your sexual voice, you can actually talk about sex. You don't go into shame. You don't go into sex is bad. You go into, you know what, sex is healthy. Sex is good. This is part of our relationship. Sex is going to grow over decades of being married. It's going to grow. It's going to change. It's going to mature. It's going to take on a life of its own that's organic if we can be open to it and kind of ride the surf of sexuality in a marriage, in a long term relationship. We can enjoy these things. We can have pleasure. We can find new pleasures. We can enjoy old pleasures. You know, we can bring in an old recipe. We can enjoy a new recipe. But you got to have a voice. If you have a voice, you feel like you're heard by your spouse or partner. You feel heard. Like if I say this to you, you're not going to go into shame and guilt and weirdness and shut down on me sexually or get angry that we actually talked about sex in the last decade. If this is the first time we talked about it, but to you, it's we always talk about sex. If you're in that kind of relationship, one or both of you don't have a sexual voice. Because some people won't let someone have a sexual voice because it intimidates them having one, and they don't want to have one. They like to keep things kind of awkward and vague. Okay, that's not a way to be successful in any area of your life, but that happens. If you have a sexual voice, changes occur in your sexuality that are mutually agreed upon. Things don't stay the same throughout your entire sexual career with each other. You actually adapt and change and grow and maybe have some adventure. And you know, sexuality moves if you have a sexual voice. Okay, now if you don't have a sexual voice, you don't feel permission either inside of you to talk about sex, like you just maybe your parents never talked about sex, maybe your community of people never talked about sex, and so it's something that we're all doing in secret, and it's kind of we don't talk about that here, right? That could be inside of you restricting you from having a sexual voice in your relationship. Now, it could be external in that your spouse or partner won't let you talk about sex. They don't want to talk about it. They shut you down if you talk about it. So it could be externally that your voice has not been permitted or you've allowed your voice not to be heard because you're being sexually bullied and you acquiesce to that. And so if you forfeited your sexual voice, there can build resentment, frustration, and pain. And that pain may look to be medicated through alcohol, through drugs, through television watching for hours a week, getting on the computer, romance novels, other kind of frustration relieving techniques for you to exist in a situation where you cannot be sexual. You cannot have a sexual voice. Okay? It may be that you lost your sexual voice in sexual abuse. 1/3 of men, 15% of men have been sexually abused. And I can tell you, as a sexual abuse survivor, you could lose your voice. You could believe all kinds of things about sexuality that are not true because the immature person who sexually used you for their own pleasure had nothing to do with you, victimized you, and tainted your sexuality. And some people, their sexuality, their voice shuts up right there. I am never coming out to play because that's awful, right? And that's legitimate. You want to get counseling. If you need counseling, always call Heart to Heart Counseling Center, 719-278-3708, so that you can talk to a counselor about that. If you've been sexually abused, you don't want your perpetrator stealing your voice inside a marriage. they didn't deserve the moment they had with you, and they don't deserve to control your sexual voice for your entire life. I'm a survivor of sexual abuse. I actually say I'm a thriver because really it has no chains on me. I enjoy sex. I'm totally engaged and connected, and I've never let my perpetrator own my sexuality. Not a day. It wasn't about me. Okay. And so it could be that you lost your sexual voice in a rape. It could be that you lost your sexual voice in a previous relationship where you couldn't have one, or it wasn't heard, or it was run over. And it could be you lost your sexual voice in another marriage. If you've lost your sexual voice, you're going to have to regain it to be able to be healthy in the current relationship you're in. Because if you do not talk about sex, it leaves an area of your life where because of you not opening up and sharing your heart, you can't grow. You can't discuss differences, you can't discuss preferences. And oftentimes those things are kind of demonized as opposed to just like, oh, okay, that's kind of where you're at. This is where I'm at. We can maybe work something out and make it work for both of us. That is more an adult thing. When you lose your sexual voice, oftentimes you can stay in sexual childhood or adolescence. Sexual child. Now, this is out of the book Intimacy: 100-Day Guide to Lasting Relationships. Okay. And you can stay a sexual child where you never talk about sex. You won't talk about sex. You think talking about sex is bad. That's a sexual child. And that will damage any marriage or relationship. The other side of that is you could be a sexual adolescent. It's all about you. You don't even know about the sexual needs or how the other person actually operates functionally. If you're a man, you might not even know how to bring your wife to orgasm because you never really tried. You never cared about that. Okay, so you can stay in selfish adolescence sexually, as another extreme. So I hope this has been helpful for you to maybe look at this and start moving in a direction where you have a sexual voice. Hey, this is my sexuality. It's different than yours. And remember, it's going to be different. The book, The 5 Sex Languages, goes through the different 5 sex languages. I guarantee you're going to be a different sex language than the other person. And we're going to get into that many shows from now. And you can get the book and get ahead on that and, learn each other's, but you're going to be different. So being different, you have to have your voice. They have to have their voice. And then you get to kind of make your own sauce sexually. And that's when it becomes really, really, really fun. Well, I want you to go to loveandsextoday.com, subscribe there, write a review on iTunes, and one of you will be picked for a private conversation with myself. Always get a free chapter at our webpage because we really do want you to have great relationships, a great life, a great sex life. We want you to have great love and great sex today.
That's it for our episode of Love and Sex Today with Dr. Doug Weiss. Head on over to loveandsextoday.com and be sure to subscribe to the show on iTunes. When you do, and you post a review on iTunes, some lucky listener is going to win every single month a private confidential coaching call with Dr. Doug Weiss. Also, feel free to ask any question you like. You can push a button, speak your question, and Dr. Doug will answer your question in a future episode. So be sure to subscribe to the show. Doug's got some great gifts for you, and we will look forward to seeing you next time.